Okay, so I'm sure some more people will trickle in, but good afternoon, everyone. Mommy Mingle and Speech Blubs are so excited to welcome you to Toddler Talk. My name is Tori Hirsch. Just a few things before we get started. If everyone could kindly mute themselves to avoid any background noise, that would be great. The mute button is found at the bottom of your screen. And feel free to keep your video cameras on or off, whatever you feel most comfortable with. If I can get a thumbs up from some of you, if you can hear me and see my presentation, that would be great. If not, write in the chat so we can assist you at this time. Okay, I'm getting some thumbs up. Thanks, guys. Awesome. Okay. So there's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes of questions at the end. Feel free to write your questions in the Zoom chat throughout the presentation or hold questions until the end of class. I promise to address everything. Okay, so here are our topics that we're going to cover today. We're going to start with a discussion about healthy screen time. This is a time-relevant subject matter. I've been getting a lot of questions about it due to the pandemic and the increase in screen time reliance. And we are talking about an app today, so I feel that recognizing healthy and appropriate screen time usage is critical. Then we'll go into a generalized app overview. We'll be touching on our speech and language milestones today, really honing in on ages 2 to 4, where language is expanding and vocabulary is exploding. We'll discuss some of the red flags you may want to be cognizant of as your toddler is progressing and, passing through these stages. Then we'll talk about the core features of Speech Blubs. So the strategic, evidence-based approaches that yield those positive speech and language outcomes. We'll also be talking about who can benefit from the app. This app is not only for speech or language impaired children. It's an excellent educational app that promotes and encourages language-rich activities. Lastly, we'll be talking about how we can generalize the skills that your toddler's making through Speech Blubs across contexts. So one of the most important aspects of my job is to teach parents the tools that they can use to support language skills at home. This is exactly what we'll be talking about today. How do we take the skills they're acquiring through the app and carry them over into everyday routines? Okay. So a little bit about me before we get started. Again, my name is Tori Hirsch. I am a New York State certified speech language pathologist. I am certified through ASHA, the American Speech Language Hearing Association. I received my master's degree from Touro College, and I have been working for the New York City Department of Education for the last 2 years in an elementary school. So I work with students as young as pre-K all the way up until 5th grade. So I'm really exposed to a wide range of communication deficits. I absolutely love what I do. This field could not be more rewarding and just genuinely so much fun. After work, I specialize working with the pediatric population. I provide play-based speech and language therapy. I do have a small private practice talking with Tori. So if any of this information is hitting home for you guys or you want to talk to me privately, my contact information will be provided at the end of class. Okay, so I want to quickly mention how this app got started in the first place. The foundation is one of the reasons I believe this app is so great and yields such positive results. So once upon a time, there were these 4 boys who grew up with speech problems. Fast forward years later, they came together to create a tool that would empower children. They said, let's create a speech therapy tool that kids will love. So after years of field research, attending conferences around the world, collaborating with therapists, teachers, parents, and children, they brought their vision to full fruition. Once you download the app, you guys will see that Speech Blubs is based off of personal experience and it's based off of passion. To me, this is just one of the many reasons the app is so special. And it's also similar to how I got involved in the speech and language field as well. I received speech services growing up through early intervention, the school system. I supplemented it with hours of seeing a private speech therapist, Miss Judy, who was amazing. She possessed all of the qualities you look for in a speech therapist. And it truly feels surreal that I'm now on the other end of the equation, working with children and their families to optimize communication skills and self-confidence. Okay, so enough talk about me. Let's dive into this material. So, healthy screen time, navigating the new reality. And isn't it so true? Screens are everywhere. So, your toddler is probably going to spend some time looking at one. And we just want to make sure that his or her screen time is as productive as possible. So, how much is too much? The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that babies younger than 18 months should have no screen time. The exception to this is video chatting with grandparents or Zooming with out of state relatives. It's considered quality time interacting with others. Toddlers 18 months to 24 months can start to enjoy some screen time, but with a parent or caregiver alongside them, which we're going to talk about shortly. Now, by ages 2 and 3, kids should be spending no more than about an hour a day on using their screens. We're living through a time where this 1 hour limit is just not all that realistic, and I get that, but we do want to make sure that we're not overdoing it, and there is a limit to it. So what is this good versus bad screen time all about? Not all screen time is considered equal. There are thousands of apps and games that claim to be educational, but not all of them are. I want you guys to search online to see which ones educators and doctors are backing. Which one do they consider to be the best? It has been scientifically proven that certain kinds of screen time are beneficial to your child's development if there's a person on the other side of the screen. So this is that good screen time that we're aiming for. Video chatting, the concept on which Speech Blubs is modeled, has many positive benefits due to the interactions that your child has on the other side of the screen. So video chatting adds that element of social contingency, which refers to that natural back and forth between partners in a conversation. This makes this form of screen time way more meaningful to children than just passive forms of screen time. We want to make sure that we're interacting alongside our children. So we want to make sure we're supporting our child and providing opportunities to model, reinforce positive attempts at communication, and praise them. We want to make sure that our children are viewing age-appropriate content and material, and it's kind of difficult to do that if we're not sitting alongside them. I love to live by the mantra, everything in moderation. So screen time is totally fine, but we want to balance it with a wide variety of other forms of play, both indoors and outdoors. We want to make sure that we're getting our children out to exercise. We want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for them to be creative, maybe through some arts and craft projects. We want them exploring their surroundings. We want them problem solving, maybe through puzzles. Above all, we want our children to become well-rounded individuals who can thrive when they're not in front of a screen. Okay, so this is a really awesome online resource I found that will help you determine whether your child has a healthy relationship with screen time. So I found that it was not only helpful in opening my eyes to how reliant a child might be on the screen, but also for explaining a lot of the questions it asks. For instance, if you take a look at the third bolded bullet that says, does your child get enough sleep? Upon first reviewing this resource, I was thinking to myself, what does this really have to do with screen time use? And then it explains it. Blue light inhibits the production of melatonin, that hormone that regulates sleep. So if a child is consistently using screens before bedtime, it may be negatively impacting their sleep pattern. This was just something that I found really interesting. I had never thought of it before. So again, if you're confused that your child spends too much time in front of their screen, this checklist can be used as a helpful guideline. You can get it from, it's right on the internet, www.bestchance.org, and you just type in healthy screen time and it'll come right up. Okay, so let's talk about a general overview of Speech Blubs. To start, Speech Blubs is science-driven. It was made with the help of a network of over 1,000 speech language pathologists who made sure that this app was equipped with all the necessary tools to improve speech and language. It's filled with evidence-based approaches, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. There are so many different activities embedded in this app. There are 22 different sections with over 1,500 activities that's going to take your little one on a journey towards achieving those milestones. So your child's going to get to explore the world of numbers, songs, colors, animal sounds, and so much more. The sections are also so great at informally exposing children to categories and groups. These are skills that are drilled in the early academic years, like preschool and kindergarten. So when you first download this app, it's going to give you a child assessment. It's going to ask a series of questions that will help to further individualize the app and tailor the activities more to your child, depending on your child's age, their gender, where they are at developmentally. Speech and language therapy takes into account the whole child, and it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. So this assessment really does feed off of this idea. This screener is also going to provide you with insight regarding which areas your child could improve on. The speech recognition feature. So there's an internal mic that picks up on vocalizations as your child tries to approximate and imitate the sounds and words. The app tracks progress. So instead of having to set all those phone reminders to practice on the app to sign in, the app itself is going to send notifications to your devices. And once logged on, it will take note of how long your child is practicing for, which is pretty awesome. And rewards. We all know that children are driven by positive reinforcement, and we know that they love stickers. So after a child practices and completes a production, or at least attempts to, they earn stickers through the app. This is a motivating, engaging feature of the app, and it essentially leaves the child just wanting more. The face filters and interactive videos shown on the app they also act as rewards, which is great. Okay, so before we talk about our speech and language milestones, I do want you all to become familiar with some of the terms and concepts I'm going to be using today. We often hear the words speech and language used interchangeably. And yes, when we're talking about communication casually, they might mean the same thing, but technically speaking, they do have very different meanings. So speech is how we say our words and sounds. Speech includes articulation, the production of individual speech sounds. So it involves using the articulators, the tongue, the lips, the teeth, and the jaw to produce sequences of speech sounds that make up words and sentences. Speech also includes our voice, so the use of the vocal folds and breathing to produce sound. Children who misuse or overuse their voice are going to present with a breathy or hoarse vocal quality. And fluency, that smoothness or flow with which sounds, syllables, words, and phrases are produced. So stuttering probably rings a bell to you guys. Stuttering is the most common fluency disorder. So just to sum up, articulation, voice, and fluency sum up our speech component. Let's talk about language now. So language is divided into two areas, receptive language and expressive language. Before we can start using our expressive language to express our wants and needs, we need to be able to understand and process language. That's exactly what receptive language is. So when we're assessing receptive language skills, we're going to want to consider whether your toddler can follow directions. So are they confused when you request an item from them? Are they able to follow simple one-step directions? Are they understanding the stories when you read with them? Are they following that storyline in the plot? Are they comprehending what they're watching on television? Do they identify objects and pictures when you're reading picture books with them? And lastly, how are they answering those WH question words? Who, what, where, when, and why? If their answers are off, it may indicate that there's a receptive delay there. So a child who isn't answering a where question with a place, with a location, they haven't grasped the meaning of that WH question word yet. Same thing for a who question. Children who aren't responding with a name of a person, they have not grasped the meaning of that WH question word. So a receptive language delay may kind of look like a child who's just answering these WH question words totally off. Okay, so expressive language, our ability to use language. So the expressive language skills are found when your toddler is asking questions, naming objects, using gestures and facial expression, so that nonverbal communication as well, making comments, their vocabulary, their grammar, and the way they're using language in social context, so their pragmatic language as well. Before I go on to the next slide and we start discussing the milestones, I do want to preface by saying these milestones should simply be used as a guideline. So there's always going to be outliers at the end of the spectrums. The 2-year-olds who are speaking full-blown sentences and the 4-year-olds who just don't have many words yet. Rather than stressing about what your child can't do yet, I want you guys to consider whether their language acquisition is occurring in a typical sequence. That to me is more important than the numbers, the ages, and all of that. Okay, so milestones, ages 2 to 3. We have sounds that are mastered earlier than others. So we have our early 8 sounds, our middle 8 sounds, and then those later developing sounds. Our early 8 sounds are P, B, M, N, D, W, Y, and H. At 12 to 18 months, your little one should start experimenting with those early 8 sounds. At about 2, your toddler should be about 50% intelligible to a stranger. By 3 years old, that number jumps to 75%. So receptively, your little one is following simple commands. So go get the ball or bring the ball to daddy. They're pointing to desired or unfamiliar items. By 3, they're even understanding a lot of those question words, those WH question words, who, what, and where. So the higher level ones, why and when, don't worry about those. Those don't have to be mastered yet. Expressively, this is a huge, huge age range where 24 months is when you go to the doctor and they ask that dreaded question, does your child have 50 words yet? So you're gonna, stress in the moment. You're gonna rack your brain trying to decide, does my child have 50 words? Let's talk about what counts as a word. So word approximations. If your child is using, instead of saying milk and they're saying Momo each and every time, that counts as a word. It's an approximation. To them, it means milk. Exclamatory words like uh-oh, wee, those count as words as well. Sign language, if your child is saying more like this, that counts as a word. Animal sounds, so instead of saying duck, if your child's saying quack quack, that counts as well. The thing I want you guys to be aware of is that in order for this to count as a word, your child needs to be using it independently and not as a repetition of a word that someone said. It's not just a spontaneous word out of nowhere. It needs to be used intentionally and independently. Okay. By 24 months, we want to start seeing some word combinations. More milk or more cookie. Your child is talking when they're playing alone. By 3, they're using some more plurals. Cookies and crackers, instead of just cookie, they are using some more pronouns, she, he, me, and prepositions, on, off, and in. I love using a light switch to kind of flick the lights on and off. Children think that is so fun. It gets a lot of repetition out of them. That is a great way to just reinforce those early prepositions. So if you guys take a look at the screenshot to the right, you can see 6 of the sections that are part of Speech Blubs. These early sounds, the animal noises, they're all targeting these early milestones that we're talking about. Okay, so These videos are going to show how Speech Blubs is used to target early sounds in words. So we have our little girl Freya here. She has not mastered the B sounds yet. So you're going to hear when I play the video, she's going to say banana with a P instead of banana with a B. And she could practice using the app.
Banana, 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 banana. I want to press the button.
Okay.
Okay. And here is another one of our child experts on the app, and he's going to be practicing baby.
3, 2, 1.
Baby, baby,
Now you try it.
baby, 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 baby.
Okay. So this app provides so many opportunities for practicing target sounds. As a speech therapist, it's so nice knowing that your children aren't going to run out of target sounds to practice. With many of my articulation students, I like sending home a list of words and what sections they can find the words in so that they can practice on the app at home. And then I have a parent sign a slip and it holds the student accountable for that speech practice. Okay. So, milestones ages 3 to 4. Speech and language are definitely becoming more complex at this point. Your 3-year-old, he or she's still using those early 8 sounds way more consistently, but they're also using T, K, G, F, ing as in wing, and J sounds. At 4, they're starting to experiment with those later developing sounds. So L's, CH, ch, S, V, SH, sh, and Z. So now that they're getting a little bit older, they are about 75 to 80% intelligible to a stranger, which means most of their speech is totally understood by someone who doesn't know them well. Receptively, they're able to identify some letters. They're understanding words for some shapes as well. They're also understanding some worldly concepts such as same and different. They have vocabulary related to family at this point. They know the difference between, grandma and grandpa and aunt and uncle. They're answering some more of those simple WH questions. Expressively, they are using more pronouns. I, me, mine, your, she, we, yours. They're asking more questions. And they're talking about events with simple story structure. So no, their stories aren't full of detail and they may lack some topic maintenance, but you're recognizing that they're using present progressive ing. So I eating lunch. Or they're using some regular past tense verbs. I played outside. They are using more plurals. They're speaking with 4 to 5 word phrases at this point, whereas before it was more 2 to 3 word phrases. And they're also starting to use some articles, the boy or a cookie. Okay. So if you guys look at the picture, the screenshot over here, this is super important. So there's going to be on your app, on the top left, there's going to be a button that says for kids, or it'll say for parents. When you click for parents, it's going to bring you to this exact screenshot, this page. So here you'll be able to find routines and activities that will boost your child's speech. You can find some information about the milestones. And on the bottom here, let's see if I could write over here, blogs. So the Speech Blubs blog, try saying that 5 times fast. I use this all the time. It works all of the There's so many activities and there's so many inspirational stories that are part of the blog. A lot of the blog posts are written by speech therapists, and it's just such an amazing feature to have included in the app. I use so many of the activities with my students at school and with my clients, and they love them. We're going to talk about some of them later. Okay, so now that your 4 or 5-year-old has made progress with speech sounds, they can highly benefit from some of these comprehension and more language-based activities. So where the app was very speech sound production based, it adapts as your child gets older to include more comprehension and language-based activities. So in our build a sentence, instead of words being used in isolation, now the app targets words being used at the phrase and the sentence level. Let me show you an example.
This is a dog. What is the dog doing? Digging. Sleeping. Chasing. The dog is sleeping in a bed. Bath. Banana. Oops. The dog is sleeping in a bed.
Okay. And then there's another comprehension-based activity called Puzzle Power. This requires children to make inferences. So they have to use their background knowledge and the clues that are given from the expert to process this information. This is executive functioning and working memory skills being targeted, which is huge. And again, I wouldn't do this with a 2 or 3-year-old, but for our 4 to 5-year-olds, as language is becoming a little bit more complex, these are excellent, excellent activities.
Has a trunk but isn't a tree? What has a trunk but isn't a tree?
Now, know that an
So it's kind of a guessing game for them, and they have to utilize the clues that this expert model is giving them to then pick the correct answer. They would have to know that an elephant has a trunk, and they would have to be able to differentiate and, between the pictures add some visual reinforcement. So again, it's just a really great language-rich activity. Okay, so let's talk about some of these red flags. We don't want to ignore red flags. Some parents are going to be advised that their child will grow out of it or they'll catch up. But that wait and see approach is outdated, and it's precious time that can be lost during a critical learning phase. So the best thing to do, and the advice I give to a lot of my families, is have a conversation with your pediatrician, let them know your concerns, and get a speech evaluation done if you are concerned. You know your child best. So this is going to be a weight lifted off of your shoulders. You're going to feel so much better just putting your minds at rest when someone is there evaluating your child, and you just don't want to lose out on early intervention services that are provided for you when your child is at an age where he or she is acquiring all of these new critical skills. So if you're not seeing new word combinations by 24 months, give it a little bit of time, and then we're going to want to take a look. Limited consonant production. So if your child is really only using vowels, this would sound a lot like ah, ooh, ooh, ooh. That means they don't have a lot of consonants yet. This is, it's kind of atypical. We want to make sure that by ages 2 and 3, we're hearing some more of those consonant sounds. If your child is pointing and grunting as opposed to communicating with words, this would be indicative of a expressive language delay. Receptively, they're pointing, but expressively, they're not saying much. Strangers having trouble understanding your child's speech at 36 months. So again, we said at this point, your child should be about 75% intelligible. So, other people aren't able to understand what your child's saying, we want to take a look at this. If your child's not showing an interest in communicating, so this is a big one. If your child is surrounded by friends and family and people who love them and they're just miserable and they're not smiling, we want to figure out why that is. Why are they not excited and willing to communicate? If your child isn't following simple directions by ages 4 to 5. So at this point, your child should be following multi-step directions. So we'll want to take a look at that. That may be indicative of a receptive language delay. Inconsistently pronounces words. So if they're saying the same word in different ways, this would be atypical. And a language regression. So if you're hearing all of these new sounds and words and then all of a sudden your child stops saying them, that's a language regression, and we don't want to see that. We want to only see progress. Okay, so let's talk about these core features of Speech Blubs. This app is based on a 3-step approach: model, imitate, contextualize. So the modeling, it consists of a video recording, as you guys saw, of a child expert performing the desired behavior. So Speech Blubs network of speech and language pathologists confirms that video modeling is highly effective when it comes to speech development. As the child is observing the other kids in the videos, it triggers their mirror neurons, which starts this imitation process. So then your child tries to simulate the sounds, words, or phrases modeled by that expert. It has also been proven that children prefer to mimic their peers rather than adults. Go figure. They see this video of someone their own age. It's not mommy or daddy. It's not their teacher. And they're thinking to themselves, oh, this kid is my age. I can do this if they can. So it kind of makes sense when you think about it. And then contextualization. So these face filters, the animations, they bring the learning to life. And it's helping the children to make connections and word associations. It's also acting as that positive reward and reinforcement when there's those mini games and those Snapchat face filters. So this 3-step approach it really does yield excellent results, and it's all evidence-based. So it works. It really does. Okay, so let me pause that.
Is it your birthday?
Okay, so in this video, we're going to see Freya again, and she's playing with, she must have just said the birthday, it must have been a birthday cake or the candles, and now the app contextualizes. So it's going to have her blowing out candles for her birthday. You're going to see how much she enjoys using this face filter feature on the app, and each word on the app has its own filter so that the child can become the word or sound that they practice. So maybe your child just said the word giraffe. Now, all of a sudden, you touch the arrow and they're in this jungle and there's all animals surrounded them. They're in a safari. Everything comes to life for them. It's really awesome. I also want you to pay attention and listen out for the mother's praise and engagement that she's providing Freya, just being there alongside her.
This is my birthday. Is it your birthday? You got cakes.
You blown out the candles. Good girl. Well done.
I can't.
Press the button. Good girl.
Okay. She's so adorable. Okay, so who benefits from Speech Blubs? So like I said, this app is absolutely not only for speech or language impaired children. This app is great for typically developing children 1 to 8. Speech Blubs is conducive to all learning types. So it works for our visual learners. Visual learners make up 65% of the population with those pictures, the animations, it's perfect. Our auditory learners, they're hearing and they're seeing the models. They're hearing the proper production of speech sounds and words. So it's awesome for our auditory learners and also for our kinesthetic learners. Everything's hands-on, the dragging, the pressing of the arrow, the touch screen features, also excellent for them. So Speech Blubs has so many different inspirational stories on their blog, and I saw a ton that have to do with children diagnosed with Down syndrome who really have had excellent progress with this app. Children with Down syndrome have weakened oral muscle tone, so this negatively impacts their speech intelligibility and their articulation. On Speech Blubs, there's a mouth gym that is perfect for these types of children with weakened oral muscle tone. It strengthens the muscles around the mouth. It has you doing exercising like pursing your lips to make a kiss, touching your toes, touching your nose, lateralizing your tongue side to side. So that's really going to strengthen those muscles around the mouth. A child with apraxia. So a child with apraxia knows what they want to say. The problem is not how the child thinks, but how the brain tells the mouth muscles to move. So when we're treating apraxia, the goal is to help a child say sounds, words, and sentences more clearly. Your child's going to learn how to plan the movements needed to say sounds and make those movements at the right time and the right way by listening to these models, by the repetition, by the practice, the consistency. Children with articulation, they can see how their peer experts are using their articulators to produce sound. For example, with our bilabial sounds, the P, B, and M, they're going to be able to see that their lips are touching together each time, P, B, M. So it'll help them to properly produce those sounds. Again, we could go on and on for all the different types of kids who benefit from using this app. But I do want to stress, Speech Blubs does not replace speech therapy. It should be used to supplement speech therapy, or if your child is using the app who doesn't receive speech therapy, it should be used to provide extra learning opportunities. Okay, so generalizing these new skills. So now our child has learned all of these skills through Speech Blubs. How do we carry these skills over into everyday activities? Routines. So I recently read an awesome article. It was published in the Journal of Applied Developmental Psychology last month. It's called Two May Be Better Than One. And it studied how most of the words children add to their vocabularies from 1.5 to 5 are learned incidentally, meaning through everyday interactions and without explicit instruction. This is why routines are so important. They're creating so many opportunities for language through that consistency and repetition, and you're also providing structure that goes such a long way for your child. Language-based activities, language-rich activities, reading, play, singing, Playdoh. We're going to discuss all of that when we talk about routines. And lastly, speech and language elicitation strategies. So when we talk about this, we're talking about adult-child interaction patterns. So we're using these patterns to maximize verbal output from our children. Okay, so by no means do you have to try to touch on these everyday routines, but picking a few of them to practice every day and even just a few times a week, it will get your child into a really great structure. Okay, good morning songs. I love using good morning songs. It allows your child to practice communicating in a relaxed and comforting way. Stretches. So talking about if your child just finished the body part section of Speech Blubs, then you want to practice reaching up to the sky and counting your fingers and reaching down to touch your toes and counting your toes. If your child just finished learning the colors through the app, you want to, when you're getting dressed with them, have them pick out the color shirt they want to wear. So they can point or vocalize red shirt, and that's awesome. You can even play around with them and put a shirt on their feet, and you could say, oh, it doesn't go on our feet. Where does it go? And you want them to lift up their hands and to point. Afternoon activities. So I love starting the afternoon, maybe after a nap, just with quiet activities like coloring. We can utilize strategies such as self-talk. So you're commenting on what you yourself are doing. So you can say, I'm drawing a white dog with black spots. And then you can use parallel talk to describe what your child's doing. Oh, you're using the blue crayon to color the sky. That looks so pretty. So coloring, awesome, language-rich activity. Play-Doh, we're going to talk about in a second. Sensory bins. I love sensory bins. They target kind of introducing your child to all different textures. So I like putting kinetic sand at the bottom of my bins. Children love it. They think it's really relaxing and comforting. You could talk about how it feels. I like putting a tweezer in my sensory bins to practice those fine motor skills, especially for children who also see an OT, occupational therapist. This is great. You can put in some wooden letter or number chips in the sand and have them find it and then label it for that expressive language. Sometimes I even put a cup of water in my sensory bins and practice a sink or float concept. So I would put a marble, drop it in, go, oh, what happened? It sank to the bottom. Or a marble, a sponge you put in and say, oh, it didn't sink, it's floating. So that's always a lot of fun for the kids. Playground games. So these are slightly noisier activities. Hide and seek, duck, duck, goose. They promote communication and also foster those turn-taking skills. So that those pragmatic skills that go hand in hand. I also want you guys making speech blubs, of course, part of your routine. So we recommend it as a quick daily practice to reinforce the sounds. So to achieve the best results, speech blubs should be used on a regular basis, but don't push it. If your child lacks concentration or motivation at times, choose 2 to 3 days a week and just have them practice and have fun on the app. It'll really help to strengthen those skills. And then our evening activities. So picture time. Here is the time as the day is winding down to go through your camera roll and all of the pictures that save to your camera roll from Speech Blubs with your child in their cute face filter. These are the times to talk about it with your child. They love seeing videos and pictures of themselves, especially in those funny face filters. If you took pictures of your child's arts and crafts for the day, talk about it with them. This is a great way. I'm sure you took so many videos of them. Play it for your child, talk about it with them. They'll love it. Bath time. So run the bath with your child and discuss temperature concepts. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Or is it just right? Singing bath time songs. My personal favorite, Rubber Ducky from Sesame Street. So after your child has sung a song over and over again and has become familiar with it, let him or her fill in some of the words. This is going to encourage vocabulary. They're going to remember these words more when it's in a song. I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, but I can remember nursery rhymes from 20 years ago. Bedtime book reading. So I spent a lot of time in graduate school nannying for families. I thought bedtime book reading was one of the most important everyday routines. To me, it's so intimate, and book reading is just super, super important. I'm a big believer in wordless picture books. I think they foster observation skills, critical thinking skills, narrative development, story-taking skills. So I highly recommend these books, especially for children who like to read the same stories night after night. So oftentimes parents are asking me, is it okay that my toddler wants to read the same book over and over again? It is okay, but we want to change up the plot a little bit. We want to change up the ending, and these wordless picture books allow for that. The story's changing each and every time your toddler opens up that book. Okay, so this activity was inspired from a Speech Blub blog. It was written by Germain, a speech language pathologist. She joined Speech Blub's writers staff this year, and she's preparing language activities and information for parents. So you can check out the blog for more great material from her. And Her post suggested that if your child struggles with specific sounds, you can use Playdoh to build different objects in relation to their target sounds. So, for instance, if they struggle with an F or an S sound, you can make flowers and fruit baskets. You can make stars or snakes while prompting and motivating your child to say the words at the same time. Have your toddler open up their mini restaurant. So if they love pizza or French fries, guide them into creating a variety of food that they love out of Play-Doh. And while they're preparing the food, you incorporate other language learning by exposing them to new words and by asking them fun questions. So is the pizza hot or cold? And then you could touch and go, oops, it's hot, hot, hot. You can ask them, is this pizza or ice cream? And have them tell you. It's just expanding on their expressive language. So Play-Doh is really a great activity that can incorporate a ton of opportunities for language. Okay, so when interacting with our children anywhere, whether it's playing on Speech Blubs, whether it's playing sports with them, whether it's at the grocery store or while you're reading books together, we want to make sure that we're always offering choices. So choices offer an alternative to yes, no questions. It shows that language can control their environment. So you can ask, would you like an apple or yogurt? And they'll have to either point, in which you would say, yeah, you can have the apple, or they're going to vocalize apple or yogurt. If we just said, do you want an apple? That's just going to be a yes or no. So these choices are really great. Same way, asking open-ended questions. So this is another way it requires an answer other than yes or no. These questions will encourage your child to expand their vocabulary. We want to make sure that we are questioning a little and not too much. So children are more intuitive than we think, and they're going to start to feel tested if we're always saying, say this, what's this? So the rule of thumb is 3 comments before a question. So it may look like this. Wow, you're working so nicely. That picture book looks beautiful. It's so colorful and bright. What did you draw? So 3 comments and then the question. Expanding. So if your child says doggy eat, you can add, yes, the doggy is eating, making that incomplete sentence a complete sentence. Playing with your voice. Changing sound of voice while playing is going to draw your child's attention and add interest to an activity. I highly recommend it. I think it works a lot with children who have difficulty sustaining attention. Sentence completions. So these are my favorite. If a child is saying a word in isolation, you want to put it into a sentence for them. So for example, a door. So if your child can say door, you want to point to the door and say, let's open that, and then they'll fill it in. Or if they need a little bit more support, give them a phonemic cue. So hold up their shoes and say, let's put on your shh, and then hopefully that'll elicit shoes. Okay, so the part you've all been waiting for, downloading this amazing app. So Speech Blubs comes as a bundle, Speech Blubs 2 and Reading Blubs, which we didn't get to talk about Reading Blubs today, but it's awesome. It touches on pre-literacy skills, awesome app. I put in a picture at the bottom here so you guys can see which one that you should download. It's available through the App Store or Google Play. You're going to enter your email and password. And then for coming today, you guys are getting a 50% off yearly subscription. Woohoo! You're entering the code Toddler Talk as the promo code. And then it's simple. You'll log into the app with that same email and password, and you'll be all set. And you guys will be getting a follow-up email from Mommy Mingle and Speech Blubs with the promo code and these steps again. So if you don't remember it now, you'll get an email with all the steps later on. Okay, so I do want to open up the Zoom for questions now. I just want to thank Mommy Mingle and Speech Blubs again for hosting Toddler Talk, and I'm hoping to hear from a lot of you guys soon. Let me pull up my chat. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Will these slides be available after the presentation for reference? I can definitely make that happen for you. Yes, I can send out these slides for sure. How much time would you recommend using the app? So I think it depends on your child's age, how engaged they are with the app. If, it feels a little bit like speech practice to them, I would do it for about 15 to 20 minutes because if they are in speech therapy, they have to be practicing outside of therapy anyway. So 15 to 20 minutes a day is totally fine, 2 to 3 times a week. If they're loving the app, let them go at it. I would say let them stay on it for a half an hour. So for any advice for a child who hums a lot? So whoever asked me that, can you clarify? You can unmute yourself.
Hi, yes. So what my son, he usually does is like, I guess when he's stimming and he's jumping, he's just humming a lot. Like when I'm trying to get him to say a word, like, I don't know how I prompt him to open up his mouth more. I don't know.
How old is he?
He's 3.
He's 3. So I would work on some oral motor exercises like blowing bubbles with him and just really strengthening the muscles around his articulator. So pursing his lips and getting him to open his mouth and to play with his tongue more. Do you think is he thinking about answering, or is it just like is he just doing it as a,
he just hums a lot majority of the day.
He what?
He hums majority of the day. Like, so I don't know if he's trying to tell me something. So
is he pointing?
No, he's not pointing.
He's not pointing. Okay, so I would work on, instead of working on those expressive language, like getting him to say words, I would work on getting him to point to things right now. So showing him an applesauce and a banana, and then saying, which one do you want? And then showing him that if he points, he gets it. Because once, maybe he just receptively doesn't have those skills yet. So he's not gonna, he's not gonna expressively tell you anything before he can receptively understand it.
That makes sense. And how do I teach him how to point? Do I have to like put his fingers down and show him like the index finger?
Yeah, I would guide his fingers to point, and then show him that when he points, you give him something right after, like an immediate reward, so that when he points, he gets what he is requesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Let's see here. Is TV as background noise also bad? So while your child is practicing on the app, I wouldn't recommend having the TV, on a loud volume in the background, just because we want our children to hear the model expert and to be able to hear their correct productions as well as their incorrect productions. But I think, if your child is just playing passively on their iPad, then it's okay to have the TV as background noise. I just would keep it to a minimum while they're working on Speech Blubs, since we do want them to be really engaged and in tune to the material. Let's see. My son, too, has 2 older sisters, 5 and 7, who talk for him. How do I get them to participate in his learning? So this happens a lot with older siblings. I would recommend using the older sisters as, you know, models for your son. You want him to hear their positive productions and their positive behaviors, and you want him to see it, but you don't want them talking for him. So maybe you could even have a talk with his older sisters and just say, we really want to work on, I don't know his name, Johnny, getting more words out and getting more sounds out. So let's let him have a try. I hear this happening a lot, actually, with older siblings kind of just talking for the younger sibling. So I would just make the older siblings aware of it and definitely use them as model figures for your younger son. If I already have the app, can I still get the discount? Good question. You signed up for the app, so sorry, you signed up for the presentation, so I'm sure we can work something out, but I will double check with Mommy Mingle and Speech Blubs for you. Okay. We've been using Speech Blubs for a while now and it works. Yay, thank you for sharing. That's awesome. I speak to my child in Spanish, but English is coming in fast. Any advice on dual language skills? So I'm not a provider, a Spanish speaker. So I don't speak any other languages, but I know many speech therapists who are, and it's totally normal for one language to, you know, be acquired earlier or later than another. So I would kind of just expose them to both Spanish and English language-rich activities. And if you're noticing that all of a sudden his Spanish language, speech and language skills are really depressed, then I would just focus a little bit more on the Spanish words and kind of just always repeating them, using those everyday routines with, you know, in the Spanish language. But also highly recommend collaborating with a Spanish speaking speech therapist to provide you with more clarity to this question. Let's see what else we have. How do you help a toddler who whines a lot when teaching words and is distracted easily? Positive reinforcement. So even just if they're sustaining attention for a little bit of time, getting them in that moment, having them do something correct or say something correct, and then giving them either a tangible reward or a sticker or a treat right after, and just saying, yay, good job, a lot of praise, so they know that behavior is, you know, what we want. And I would also recommend working in a room that's not filled with a lot of his or her favorite toys. I see that that's really a big distraction for the little ones, just being able to move away from the activity and kind of just grab their toys instead. So I always have my sessions in a pretty much like an isolated room where a student or a client isn't surrounded by their favorite toys. So I'm having I get a few questions on the discount code. You guys will be provided with a step-by-step instruction if it's not working. So just hold tight for that email. This is a good question. My 30-month-old enjoys the Speech Blub videos, but doesn't participate in mimicking the Speech Blub sounds and words the majority of the time. Is there a way to encourage him to try and actively participate more? So I would I wouldn't let your child go on to the face filters and the fun videos that it shows until there's some sort of imitation from him. You can say, we have to imitate, and then we get the fun videos, and then we take the pictures together. If, he is not imitating the model speaker and just going straight to the stickers and the face filters, then he's going to know that, oh, I don't have to practice. I could just go right there. So you want to take it away from him and say, oh, no. Before we get our reward, we have to imitate. We have to practice. Let's see. My toddler now says car, okay, 3, randomly since using the app. It's also, thanks for sharing that. So it's also cute because when a child gets a sticker through the app, someone like colors in the sticker and then says, wow, or ta-ta. And now one of my clients is just saying, wow, when something funny or fun happens throughout the session. So I know it's attributed to Speech Blubs, which is awesome. What is the difference between Speech Blubs 1 and 2? So Speech Blubs 2 is just updated with more activities, and it's constantly being updated. And Speech Blubs 2 is also a bundle with Reading Blubs. So there's just, it's just an updated version, and I'm not sure if I think you have to go back into the App Store and download Speech Blubs 2. I don't think it automatically updates. So I highly recommend doing that. My 2-year-old more oftentimes just outright tells me no when asked to say or repeat a word. How do I combat this? So if your child is requesting something and if you have them repeat the word and they say no, I would just withhold that item from them until you hear it. If you can say, can you point to it, or can you point to what you want? But if you know that he or she can say the word and you just want to, get a little bit more out of him or her, then you want to withhold that item and say, we have to, use your words. I know you can say it. Let's hear it before giving it to them. My son is 16 months. He can moo when he sees a cow and bark when he sees a dog. He understands some basic instructions, but it is all a hit or miss if he does it. When do you know it is time to start seeking professional help? So 16 months, moo counts as a word, and barking is the sound of a dog counts as a word as well. He's still really young. And the fact that he's understanding basic instructions at this point is, even some of the time, is great. I would definitely hold off on seeking professional help right now, because he has some of those words already. I got your time wrong, so I just logged in. Okay, so for the person who just messaged me that, we can email you about this. Okay. How do you teach the word and gesture hi? So I would walk in and out of a room by opening the door and say, hi, by waving, and then also show a lot of videos to kind of just put it into, to contextualize exactly what Speech Blubs does, to contextualize this greet. Every time you open and close a door, you should say, hi, and then bye. Eventually it'll become, your child will be able to say it. would you recommend that we focus on one topic at a time? One day dedicated to numbers and the next day dedicated to body parts? Yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it. Even you can even gauge just whatever your child is really, all about. I know I have a client who's loving colors and letters right now, so I'm focusing more on that. So kind of base it off of what they're super engaged in at the time. But yes, sticking to different sections is totally fine. That's a good way of using the app. Okay, I could take just probably 2 more questions. Any advice for child who just repeats everything you say? How are you? They will say, how are you? How old is this child?
He's 3.
So a child who is repeating everything you say, I would definitely start writing down instances where this happens, because we do want our children at this point to be speaking a little bit more spontaneously on their own. We want to probably, I would again use a lot more nonverbal communication. So saying, what do you want? And then if they say, what do you want? They're going to realize, well, that's not going to get them what they want. You can hold 2 things up, and then you'll say, do you want an apple or a banana? And if they say apple or banana, you could say, then I don't know. You could just show them that what they're saying isn't, is just solely a repetition of what you're saying, that it's not going to control their environment. You want them to recognize that when they give you a word, it's going to control that request.
Okay.
Okay. So guys, for anyone who has additional questions, or if I didn't get to your question, I'm sorry, shoot me an email. I will 100% respond. All my contact information is provided on this last slide. So take note of that. And I just want to thank Mommy Mingle and Speech Blubs again. You guys are awesome. Thanks everyone so much for joining. And I'm hoping to hear from a lot of you guys soon. Have a great rest of the day.